My name is Emily, and I'm 31 now. But the moment that changed everything happened when I was just 17. It was a regular Saturday night in our house. The smell of spaghetti sauce filled the kitchen. The television was droning on from the living room while my dad sat on the recliner flipping channels. My mom was standing at the stove, stirring with one hand and scrolling her phone with the other. The linoleum floor squeaked every time someone shifted their weight, and the hum of the old fridge made everything feel a little too quiet in between words. I had been holding onto the decision for weeks, maybe months. I didn't say it right away. I waited until we were halfway through dinner. My sister, Rachel, was talking about her mock trial team again, bragging about how she would probably make partner before she was 30. My dad nodded, clearly impressed. My mom kept smiling like every word Rachel said was poetry. I was sitting across from them, pushing spaghetti around my plate, feeling smaller by the second. Then I said it. Calm, clear, and steady. I want to be a chef. At first, there was silence. My mom looked up, still holding her fork midair. My dad blinked once. Then he laughed, not a cruel laugh, just the kind people make when they think you're joking. Rachel snorted and said, "You, a chef, since when is that a career?" My mom added, "Emily, sweetie, cooking is cute, but it's not something you do for a living. That's hard work. Stressful, hot kitchens, long hours. Why don't you do something more stable? You're good at math, maybe accounting." I remember every detail from that moment. The way the overhead light flickered, the sound of Rachel's bracelet clinking against her glass, the taste of tomato sauce that suddenly felt too sour. I didn't cry. I didn't argue. I just sat there, quiet, while they moved on to another topic as if I hadn't said anything at all. But something inside me shifted. Later that night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling fan as it spun slowly, thinking about what it meant to have a dream that no one else believed in. That laugh, that off-handed, dismissive laugh, echoed in my ears like a door slamming shut. But instead of walking away from it, I leaned in. Over the next few months, I began to cook in secret, not because I was hiding, but because it gave me a place to be myself. I'd sneak down into the kitchen late at night after everyone was asleep. I'd try recipes I found online, write down notes in a little red notebook I kept under my bed. The first time I tried to make French onion soup, I burned the onions and set off the smoke alarm. My dad shouted from the hallway asking if I was trying to kill us. I laughed to myself quietly as I waved a dish towel under the censer. I started spending my lunch money on spices. Not makeup, not new shoes like the other girls. Spices. Saffron when I could afford it, cinnamon sticks, smoked paprika. I'd open the jars and breathe them in like they held the secrets of the world. My backpack always smelled like cumin and garlic powder. A few classmates teased me for it. I didn't care. I liked smelling like something real. At school, I signed up to volunteer at the cafeteria. Not glamorous, but I wanted to see how big kitchens worked. I chopped vegetables, washed trays, peeled potatoes until my fingers cramped. And I loved every second of it. The pace, the pressure, the quiet pride when someone nodded at your station and didn't say anything, because that meant you were doing it right. My guidance counselor asked me about college one day. I told her I wanted to apply to culinary school. She frowned and said, "You're smart, Emily. You could do anything. Why settle for something so limited?" I smiled politely, but inside I wanted to scream. Why did everyone think cooking was beneath me? Why did feeding people, healing them, honoring them, remembering them, count as something small? The more they dismissed it, the more certain I became. Every time someone rolled their eyes or changed the subject when I brought it up, I added another log to the fire inside me. I wasn't duped. It wasn't just about food. It was about meaning, about taking something raw and chaotic and turning it into something beautiful. Something that said, I was here, I made this, and it mattered. So I kept going, even when they laughed, especially when they laughed. The first real kitchen I ever stepped into wasn't in some glossy restaurant or culinary school. It was a church basement. I was 17 and had volunteered for a weekend community dinner organized by a local shelter. I told them I could cook. That was a lie. I didn't even know how to properly use a chef's knife. But they didn't ask questions. They were just happy to have help. The kitchen smelled like sweat, onions, and bleach. The floors were sticky. The overhead lights buzzed. There were 3 women running the show: Gloria, who wore her apron like armor and barked orders like a drill sergeant; Linda, who always had a wooden spoon in her hand but never seemed to use it; and June, who hardly spoke, just chopped vegetables faster than I thought humanly possible. They put me on potatoes. 10 pounds. Peel, rinse, dice. I didn't complain. I kept my head down and worked. An hour in, I had blisters on both thumbs. I dropped one pot and nearly spilled scalding water on my shoes. I cried in the supply closet for 3 minutes, then came back out and kept going. By the time the food was served, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, green beans sautéed with garlic and lemon, I was so exhausted I didn't think I could lift another pan. But then I saw them. People coming through the line. Some barely looked up. Others smiled like the warm plate in their hands meant the difference between despair and something almost like hope. And I thought this is what food can do. After cleanup, Gloria pulled me aside and handed me a dish towel. "You've got heart, kid," she said. "But heart's not enough. You need grit. You ready to come back tomorrow?" I nodded before I could think. "Yes, ma'am." And she smirked. "Then show up on time and wear shoes that don't melt." That summer, I showed up every Saturday and Sunday. I learned how to hold a knife properly, how to cut onions without crying, how to clean a grill so the next shift didn't curse your name. I learned how to read a recipe and then how to throw it away and just feel the food. I learned that cooking wasn't just skill. It was rhythm, muscle memory, listening to the sizzle and knowing when to flip, to stir, to stop. Back home, my parents still didn't take any of it seriously. My mom thought it was just a phase. My dad called it my little soup kitchen hobby. Rachel rolled her eyes every time I mentioned anything about cooking. But I was different now. The kitchen had given me something school never did: confidence, autonomy, identity. In secret, I applied to a culinary school 3 states away. It wasn't fancy, but it had a reputation for turning out real chefs, not just TV personalities. I wrote my essay like I was telling a story to someone who needed to understand why fire didn't scare me anymore. Why I didn't need applause, just a stove and a reason to light it. When the acceptance letter came, I didn't show it to my parents right away. I hid it in the back of my closet behind my winter sweaters. I needed time. Not to build courage, I already had that, but to build a plan. I started working at a local diner after school, saved every tip, told my parents I was just saving for a car. They didn't ask questions. I guess they assumed I'd give it up eventually, that I'd come to my senses. They didn't know I had already found them. One night, while restocking shelves at the diner, the owner, Joe, asked me what I really wanted to do. I told him. I didn't hold back. I talked about food like it was poetry. He didn't laugh. He just nodded and said, "Then you better learn how to work a line, not just a soup station." He gave me my first shot on the grill. I messed up the first 4 orders. Overcooked one, forgot the pickles on another, nearly lit a rag on fire. But by the end of the night, I had a system. I didn't need someone to believe in me. I just needed the chance to prove myself. And that's what I kept doing. One plate at a time, one shift at a time, one cut, one burn, one quiet victory at a time. I wasn't chasing approval anymore. I was building something, something only I could see, but it was real. And it was coming together, heat by heat, scar by scar. I submitted my application to culinary school in early fall and got my acceptance letter in October. I remember the moment like it was car. I didn't tell my family for a week. I needed time, not to build up courage, I had that already, but to figure out how I'd say it why. One evening after dinner, I laid the letter in front of a culinary school, she scoffed. Seriously? My mom sighed. Emily W's. My jaw clenched. I had the numbers figured out. A scholarship covered almost half. The rest I'd earn myself. I'd been saving every tip from my diner job. I'd sleep less, eat less, take night shifts, but I would go. I wasn't looking for their permission. I was informing them. Dad leaned back, exhaling like he needed a second to process. Your mother's right, he said. Life isn't some cooking show. Nobody walks out of this house to make soup for a living. I didn't argue. I just stood up, walked to my room, and closed the door behind me. And for the first time in my life, I didn't feel guilty for disappointing them. I felt free. When I left for school, no one walked me out to the car. There was no goodbye hug, no proud send-off. Just me, a backpack filled with my knives and notebooks, and a suitcase I bought second-hand off Craigslist. The cab driver asked where I was headed. I told him to find my flavor. He laughed and said, hope that roads got good seasoning. Culinary school wasn't glamorous. It didn't feel like the dream I imagined. It was hot, chaotic, brutal. Burned fingers, screaming instructors, grease on every surface. I loved every second of it. My first chef instructor was Leclerc, old-school French, terrifyingly precise. He never smiled. He didn't believe in compliments. But when I made a simple coq au vin in my first practical exam and he tasted it, he nodded. Just once. That nod meant more to me than any applause I'd never received at home. I learned how to hold a knife properly, how to taste with intent, how to salt like it meant something. I learned patience, because a real stock takes 8 hours. I learned discipline, because plating isn't about decoration, it's about communication. And I learned how to fail. My first soufflé collapsed. My first mousse separated into something that looked like regret. I cleaned up, breathed deep, and did it again. Outside of class, I picked up a weekend job in a small bistro 2 blocks from campus. Just a prep cook at first, chopping, cleaning, staying out of the way. But I paid attention. I watched how the line worked, how they moved without speaking, how the sous chef could sense when a sauce needed 5 more seconds just by its smell. I burned myself more than once, sliced my finger open on a mandolin, went home with aching feet and an aching heart, but I kept showing up. One Friday night, while cleaning lettuce bins, the manager asked what I was really doing there. I told him about the dream, about the way cooking made me feel like I wasn't invisible. He nodded and said, then learn the line. Forget pretty plates for now. Learn the heat. He gave me my first chance on grill station. I overcooked a steak, forgot the charred lemon garnish on a halibut plate, but by the end of the shift, I'd found my rhythm. I had burns on my forearm and sweat in my eyes, but I also had something new, proof. Proof that I could stand in the fire and not run. Back in my dorm room that night, I looked at my reflection in the microwave door. My apron was stained, my hands smelled like garlic, and I was smiling. I wasn't trying to prove them wrong anymore. I was trying to prove myself right, and I was doing it. One shift at a time. By the end of my first semester, I had ranked at the top of my class in classic sauces. My velouté was praised by Chef Leclerc himself. I should be been calling someone my mom, my dad to share the moment. I should be been grinning through a phone call, hearing someone say, "We're proud of you." But there were no missed calls on my phone, no messages asking how school was going, no "we miss you," no "you okay." Silence, like I had left and simply disappeared from their map. So I stopped waiting. Instead, I started celebrating my own wins in quiet ways. When my dish was chosen to represent our class at a school-wide tasting event, I bought myself a slice of cheesecake from the bakery down the block. I sat alone on a bench in the cold, the wind numbing my fingertips, and let the fork melt in my mouth. It was creamy, citrusy, rich, and I told myself, "You earned this." I kept working weekends at the bistro. I showed up early, stayed late, kept my head down. The kitchen was loud, fast, a controlled chaos. Burn orders, angry chefs. Orders slammed onto the pass with urgency. I had never felt so alive. That kitchen didn't care where I came from. It didn't care what my dad thought about chefs or what Rachel snickered about at family dinners. It only cared if I could hold my own, and I could. I was promoted to line cook in my second month. Sauté station. Garlic, butter, steam. My station became my rhythm. I learned to anticipate the ticket before it even hit the rail. I could smell when a sauce was ready without looking. I had burns on both forearms, my hands were calloused, my back ached at night, but I was proud. One Friday night, after a brutal dinner rush, I sat on a milk crate behind the kitchen with a soda and a bag of ice pressed against my wrist. My phone buzzed. It was my mother. My breath caught. I stared at the screen for a full 10 seconds before answering. "Hello," my voice cracked slightly. "Emily," she said, "your father's retiring next month. We're planning a little celebration, just family. You can come home for that weekend, can't you?" I hesitated. In the background, I could hear the television, Rachel laughing, maybe football on, the same life happening without me. "I can't," I said finally. "I've got shifts that weekend. It's midterms." Silence on the other end. "Oh," she said, "well, it's okay, I just thought I'd ask." That was it. No "how are you," no "we miss you." No curiosity about how my classes or my job were going. She ended the call with a flat "take care." I sat there for a while after the line went dead. The back alley smelled like fryer oil and cigarette smoke. A rat scurried past my foot, and I didn't even flinch. That phone call, that tone in her voice, it finally told me the truth. They hadn't changed. They hadn't noticed. I wasn't chasing their approval anymore, but something in me still stung. That quiet ache of not being chosen. Not even once. The next week, I cut myself badly while slicing shallots during prep. Blood mixed with the juice running down my fingers. They rushed me to urgent care. 4 stitches. A dull, throbbing pain all night. I didn't tell anyone back home. No one would ask. I learned how to wrap my hand and keep cooking with one good one. I stirred with my left. Cracked eggs single-handed. Adapted, adjusted. I'd been doing that my whole life, surviving around what was missing. One night, I asked Chef Leckler if he had ever told his family he was proud of what he did. He looked up from his clipboard and said, "Not once." They wouldn't have understood. And I got it. There are dreams that don't make sense to other people, especially when they come from someone like me, the quiet girl who used to set the toaster on fire and cry when the spaghetti overboiled. But that's the thing about fire. It either burns you or it makes you stronger. Mine had done both. I stayed after class one evening, cleaning pans long after everyone else left. I played soft music through the Bluetooth speaker, jazz, something with an easy tempo. The kitchen echoed every clang, every rinse. I was alone but not lonely. I had purpose now. I wasn't waiting for applause anymore, or a letter from home. or someone to say, "You've done well." I could feel it every time a customer sent back a clean plate. I could feel it when the sous chef nodded at my sauce. I could feel it in the rhythm of my knife, the beat of the burner, the hiss of the sauté. And late that night, as I walked home in the cold with my hands wrapped in gauze and my coat smelling like onions and smoke, I whispered something I'd never said before, not to anyone. "I'm proud of you." And for the first time, I believed it. It was late spring when I got the email from the institute. A major culinary competition was coming up at regional level, with representatives from top schools across the state. I had been nominated by my instructors. Only 3 students from our entire program were selected, and I was one of them. I stared at the email, my heart racing. Then, almost out of instinct, I reached for my phone. My thumb hovered over my mom's contact, but I didn't call. I didn't want the sound of hesitation in her voice again. Didn't want to hear her say, "Well, that's nice," like I just told her I got a participation ribbon in gym class. I called Chef Leclerc instead. He didn't pick up, but 10 minutes later I got a text. "You've earned this, cook from the gut, that's where the real fire is." That was enough. The competition was in a ballroom at a downtown hotel. Huge ceilings, bright lights, stainless steel everything. I'd never seen so many white coats in one place. There were media crews, local food bloggers, executive chefs from 3-star restaurants. My hands shook when I set up my station, but when the timer started, I found my rhythm. I cooked like I was back in the bistro kitchen, focused, grounded, determined. My dish was seared duck breast with cherry balsamic reduction on top of a whipped parsnip puree. I plated it clean, garnished with microgreens. When the judges came around, I didn't flinch. I explained the dish, the technique, the reason I paired those flavors, and then I waited. Hours passed. Other students paced the hallway, some called their parents, some cried quietly in corners. I sat on the carpeted floor with my back against the wall and stared at the ceiling. And I thought, even if I don't win, I made it here. I had walked into this ballroom on my own 2 feet, carrying everything I'd built with burnt hands and second chances. When they called my name for first place, I didn't move at first. I thought I'd misheard, but then people clapped. My classmates screamed. Someone pushed me forward. And there I was, standing on a small platform, holding a certificate and a kitchen knife set worth more than my rent. I didn't cry, I smiled. And that night, for reasons I still don't fully understand, I posted a photo of my dish on Facebook. Just the plate, no caption. I went to bed expecting silence. But when I woke up the next morning, there were 3 missed calls from home. I checked my messages. "Emily," my mom's voice on the voicemail sounded unsure. "We saw your photo. Your father says congratulations." We had no idea it was such a big event. Then another message. "Your Aunt Linda shared it, said it was trending on some food page. Are you okay? Are you coming home anytime soon?" And finally the last one. "We're proud of you." 3 words. After all this time. But instead of feeling joy, I felt like their voices were reaching me through a fog that no longer mattered. I went to work that day and didn't tell anyone about the messages. I prepped, cooked, and cleaned like it was any other Saturday. But that night, when I got back to my apartment, there was a letter in my mailbox. Handwritten, from my dad. He never wrote letters, it was short. "I still don't understand why you didn't choose law or something easier. But I saw the look on your face in that photo. I haven't seen that look in years. I hope you're happy. Dad. Inno's love. Inno miss you." But he used my name, and he said hope. It wasn't a full apology. But maybe it didn't have to be. I placed the letter on my fridge with a magnet shaped like a tomato. Then I opened my laptop. updated my resume, and typed in the line. First place, the statewide Culinary Institute competition, 20XX. Then I sent out 3 applications to restaurants I once thought were out of my league, because I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for applause. Not for forgiveness. Not even for understanding. I was building something of my own now, one dish at a time. The first restaurant to respond was Langston. High-end, nationally recognized, run by a chef who'd once been on the cover of Food and Wine. They offered me a trial shift. Not a job, just one night on the line to see if I could keep up. I said yes, even though my stomach twisted with nerves. This wasn't a bistro kitchen with paper tickets and mismatched pans. This was a place where servers wore suits, where the plating tweezers cost more than my rent, and where everything, absolutely everything, had to be perfect. I took the train across town with my knives wrapped in a linen towel, hands sweating the whole ride. When I arrived, the kitchen was already moving like a machine. No yelling, no chaos, just quiet urgency. Each station had its own tempo and everyone knew their place. I was introduced to the sous chef, a woman named Marcy. She didn't smile, didn't ask about my experience, just handed me a list. You're working cold apps, you prep fast, you stay clean, you don't speak unless it's necessary. Got it. Got it, I said. I peeled carrots in silence. Diced shallots to the size of grains of rice. Arranged microgreens like I was building art. Every motion had to be intentional, efficient, invisible. The first ticket came in, then the second, then 10 more. By the second hour, I wasn't thinking anymore, I was moving. My hands remembered what my nerves tried to forget. My body knew the rhythm. It had been trained in fire. Somewhere in the middle of service, I noticed the head chef, Marcus Langston himself, watching from the pass. He didn't say anything, he just watched, arms folded. When the rush slowed, he finally stepped closer. "You Emily?" he asked. "Yes, chef." "That vinaigrette on the heirloom salad, yours." "Yes, chef." He nodded once. "Don't go anywhere after service." And then he walked away. I kept working. Hand steady, heart louder than the burners. At midnight, after the last station was scrubbed and the floors were hosed down, Marcus found me in the alley behind the kitchen, where I stood with my jacket half-zipped, trying to breathe in the cold night. "You've got control," he said. "And taste, you're not afraid to be quiet in a loud room, that matters here." He paused. "I'm offering you a spot, full-time, 6 nights a week. Pay's not great, hours are worse, but if you want to learn, really learn, this is the place." I nodded so fast I almost lost balance. "I want it," I said. That night I didn't sleep. I lay on my mattress, fully clothed, staring at the ceiling. This was it. This was the door. The one no one thought I could ever walk through. I wanted to call home. To say, "Guess where I'm working now." To hear someone gasp or cry or at least sound impressed. But I didn't. I already knew the silence that would follow. So instead I called Leclerc, left a message. "Chef, I got the job at Langston, thank you." That was it. In the morning, his reply came in a single line. "Make them taste you in every plate." I started at Langston the next day. 6 nights a week, sometimes 7, no weekends, no holidays. I worked Christmas Eve, New Year's Day, Valentine's. Every shift was a war. Not the kind with shouting or slamming pans, but a silent, brutal war against time, heat, and perfection. I learned faster than I thought possible. Not just the food, but the rhythm, the unspoken rules, the discipline that separates amateurs from lifers. One night, while prepping a charred beet puree, I caught Marcy watching me. "You're good," she said. "Thank you." "But are you hungry?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" She leaned in slightly. "You've got technique, but hunger's different. Hunger gets you promoted. "Hunger gets you noticed. Hunger walks into the dining room." That line stuck with me. I didn't want to just survive in that kitchen. I wanted to be known, to have my own dishes on the menu, to have a voice, even in a room full of giants. So I stayed late after every shift, tested flavor combinations, built mock plates on my own time. I even bought a notebook and started logging ideas, sketches, textures. And one night, after everyone left, I created something. Roasted cauliflower steak, dusted with smoked paprika, served on a bed of parsnip and apple puree, topped with pickled golden raisins. I plated it with care, took a photo, tasted it, and for a brief second I cried. Not because it was perfect, but because I finally tasted myself in it, the version of me no one had believed in, the one I built from scratch. The next day, I printed the photo and slipped it into my locker. Underneath it, I wrote a single line. They laughed. Let them taste what came after. Langston had just launched a seasonal tasting menu, and Marcus gave me the chance to contribute a dish for review. It wasn't guaranteed to go on the menu, only that he'd try it, and if it met his standards, we'd talk. I chose something deeply personal. A roasted corn bisque inspired by the soup I used to make for myself when I first moved into that tiny apartment. But this time, I elevated it. Charred corn, smoked sea salt, a swirl of paprika oil, and a miniature grilled cheese bite on the side with sourdough I baked myself. Marcus tried it in silence. Then he handed me the empty spoon. "We'll test it Friday." Just like that, my soup, my memory, had a shot at being on Langston's tasting menu. I spent the next few days dialing in the flavors, adjusting for the demands of fine dining. I stayed late, refining texture and color, working in near silence while the city buzzed just outside the back kitchen doors. Friday night came, and with it a full reservation list. Every table packed. The hum of conversations, the clink of glasses, the soft shuffle of servers weaving between tables. And somewhere in that crowd, without me knowing, my past walked in. I was plating my fourth bowl when Marcy called my name. "Table 17, she said. "They asked for you by name." I frowned. Nobody asks for me. Wells, they did. I wiped my hands, untied my apron, and stepped out of the kitchen for the first time mid-service. The dining room was dim, golden with candlelight. And sitting at table 17, dressed in the same tired navy blazer he always wore, was my father. Next to him, my mother, looking small in a dress she hadn't worn in years. And across from them, Rachel. Her hair was blonder, styled into perfect waves. Her laugh cut across the room before she even saw me. I froze. The last time I saw them, I was leaving for culinary school with a suitcase and no goodbye. And now, they were here, in the restaurant where I had fought for every inch of space. They had walked into the one world where I wasn't small. My mother was the first to notice me. Her eyes widened, then quickly blinked as if unsure what expression to wear. "Emily," she said, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. "Look at you, Chef Whites and all." Rachel turned next. She looked around, unimpressed. "So, this is where you've been hiding?" I didn't answer, I simply nodded. My father was last. He stood up slightly, not quite meeting my eyes. "We saw the piece in the paper, that article about Langston's new rising talent. Your name was right there, so we figured we'd come try it ourselves." A newspaper article, that's what it took to get them here. I looked down at the table. There were 4 bowls of soup in front of them, my soup. Rachel was already stirring hers with her spoon. "It's good," she said, "though I think I've had something similar at a wedding once." My mother was more polite. "It's nice, creamy, you always did like soup, didn't you?" I stood there for a beat longer than I should have. Then I smiled professionally and said, Enjoy the rest of your meal before walking away. Back in the kitchen, my hands trembled as I grabbed the next order. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even hurt, not in the way I expected. I was detached, like I had walked into an old house from my childhood and realized the furniture didn't fit anymore. The walls had shrunk. The colors had faded. And I didn't belong there, not because I had changed too much, but because I had finally grown into myself. I finished the shift like any other night, cleaned my station, tied my knives back into their cloth. But before I left, I checked the reservation book for the name they'd used. Rachel Jefferson. She had made the reservation, not my parents. She had seen the article, booked the table, and brought them here. Why? To gloat. To see if I had really become someone. Or maybe to confirm I had. I didn't know. I still don't. But what I did know, as I walked out of that kitchen into the cool midnight air, apron tucked under my arm, hair damp with sweat, was that I had survived something most people never escape. I had faced the people who doubted me in the one place they couldn't ignore me, not with words, but with taste. And in that moment, I didn't need their praise. The silence of the dining room after they left told me everything I needed. They had come, they had eaten, and they had walked away quieter than they arrived. That weekend, Rachel messaged me, a short text. "Nice restaurant. Mom says she liked your soup." I didn't reply. I stared at it for a few seconds, then locked my phone and slipped it back into my locker. I had prep to finish. A salmon to butcher, herbs to pick, tickets to plate, and besides, what could I even say? Thanks for finally showing up. Thanks for doing nothing while I fought for scraps of support. No, they had seen the version of me that could be printed on paper and served in bowls, but they hadn't stayed long enough to learn the heat it took to make me real. Still, the visit lingered in my head, not because I craved more, but because it forced me to see something I hadn't dared admit. I was no longer that girl who tiptoed around family dinners, waiting to be invited into the conversation. No longer the one who hid her dreams in napkin sketches or whispered ideas into the steam of her soup pot. I had become someone else, someone whole. But growth is funny. It doesn't come all at once like thunder. It sneaks in like light through a curtain in the morning. Slow, quiet, until you turn around and realize the darkness is gone. And now that they had seen me, now that their eyes had landed on the life I built with burned hands and stubborn faith, it felt like I could breathe a little deeper. Not because I needed validation, but because I was no longer hiding. That Monday, I brought Marcus a new dish idea, a savory bread pudding with leeks and goat cheese, topped with a tomato confit glaze. He nodded through every bite. "Put it in R&D," he said. "Might have a place on the spring menu." Every small win like that, it mattered more than their belated compliments. Still, something pulled at me, not anger, but curiosity. Why now? What changed? Why would Rachel book that table? Why walk into my world? I couldn't let it go, so one night after service I called her. She picked up after 2 rings. "Wow," she said. "Didn't expect to hear from you." "I didn't expect to be calling," I said, trying to keep my tone even. "But I need to ask, why'd you come to the restaurant?" A pause, then, "Because I didn't believe the article." That stung. I didn't show it. She kept going. "You were always the quiet one, the picky eater, the one with notebooks full of weird ideas and lists of perfect meals for imaginary customers. I guess I thought you'd grow out of it." I let the silence hold. She wasn't finished. But then I saw the photo, that soup, that kitchen, and I thought, maybe you were never the weak one. Maybe we were just never paying attention. I didn't know what to say to that. Apologies don't always come wrapped the way we want them. Sometimes they arrive backwards, crooked, still full of old habits, but even broken bridges can be crossed if you're careful. Thanks for coming, I said quietly. Another pause. Dad's been carrying your article in his wallet. Not sure if you care. I didn't say I did, but I felt something loosen in my chest. After the call, I sat on my fire escape with a cup of cold coffee. Below me, the street hummed with the usual 2 a.m. Restlessness, delivery trucks, laughter, sirens. The city had never tried to make me smaller. It had challenged me, yes, but it had also accepted me, let me grow. And now, for the first time, I saw my past not as a wound, but as soil. Rough, unforgiving, but it had shaped my roots. I opened my notebook and flipped to the page where I had written. They laughed. Let them taste what came after. Below it, I added a new line. I'm not here to prove them wrong anymore. I'm here because this is who I've become. Because that's the thing they never told you about dreams. They don't just get built, they transform you in the process. And eventually, even the people who doubted you will have to squint to recognize the person standing at the top of the mountain. It was a Wednesday afternoon when I got the card. Thick paper, cream-colored. My name written in blue ink across the front. Inside, an invitation. You are cordially invited to a celebration in honor of Rachel and Daniel's engagement. The party would be at the family house. The one with the blue shutters and the mailbox shaped like a fish. The one I hadn't stepped foot in since the night I left for culinary school. There was no handwritten note, just a printed message at the bottom. Dinner to be served at 6 p.m. Family-style meal, casual dress. I stared at it for a long time. Part of me laughed, family style, as if the word family hadn't felt like a closed door for most of my adult life. For a moment, I thought about throwing the card away. I didn't need that room. I didn't need that table. But then I remembered something Leclerc once told me during a slow night when the kitchen was nearly silent. Sometimes you show up not because you owe them anything, but because you want to see what you've outgrown. So I said yes, not to them but to myself. I took the train that Saturday. Packed a clean shirt, dark jeans, and a bottle of wine I knew they wouldn't recognize, something earthy and bold from a local vineyard upstate. The house looked the same. Too tidy. Curtains too stiff. The grass cut into lines that felt more like rules than landscaping. Rachel answered the door. Her face flickered between surprise and relief. You came, she said. I shrugged. You invited me. Inside, the dining table was already full. Candlelight, polished silverware. Dad in his usual seat, now with more gray at his temples. Mom fussing over napkins. Daniel, Rachel's fiancé, tall, charming, clearly nervous in a house that wasn't yet his. When I walked in, the room quieted. Not in a hostile way, just in the way people do when they see a ghost they didn't expect to return. Dad cleared his throat. We weren't sure you'd make it. I smiled politely. I wasn't either. They had catered the meal. Roast chicken, potatoes, a green bean dish that looked like it had come straight from a grocery store display. Mom gestured toward an empty seat. I took it. Dinner began. People talked, laughed. Shared stories I wasn't part of. I listened, ate slowly, answered when asked. But I kept feeling it, the subtle glances, the way forks paused when I spoke, like they were waiting to see if I'd say something dangerous. Eventually, Dad turned to me. So Langston's doing well. Yes, I said. They just gave me 2 dishes on the spring menu. He nodded. Your mom printed the article. It's on the fridge. I blinked. You read it. We all did, Rachel added. Even Grandma, she said you always had clever hands. That caught me off guard. The room softened after that, as if saying my name in a positive sentence had broken some invisible wall. Mom even leaned over once to ask, "What's the trick to your roasted carrots? Mine always turn mushy." And I told her, plainly, no pride, no sarcasm, just the trick, high heat, olive oil, leave them alone. It wasn't forgiveness. But it was a step. After dessert, store-bought cheesecake, people drifted into the living room, laughing, sipping wine, retelling the same old stories about Rachel's high school prom or Dad's old fishing trip. I lingered in the kitchen. And that's when he walked in. Dad, he stood by the sink, not looking at me. After a long pause, he said, I didn't get it before. I didn't speak. I thought cooking was a fallback, something you did when you didn't know what else to do. Leftovers, she said. I didn't know if you'd want them, but just in case. I took it, walked out the door, and as I stepped into the cold night, I realized something strange. The visit hadn't hurt. Because I didn't need them to make me whole anymore. I had come not for closure, but for clarity, and now I had it. The first thing I did when I got back to the city was throw away the Tupperware, not out of spite, but because it didn't belong in my fridge. That meal came from a house where I had spent years trying to fit in, and I had finally accepted I didn't need to fit there anymore. I needed to build something of my own. A few days later, Marcus called me into his office. He was seated behind his desk, the same way he always was, sleeves rolled up, reading glasses low on his nose, a notepad in one hand and a pen in the other. I hear you're looking restless, he said without looking up. I shrugged. I'm just thinking about what's next. He finally met my eyes. You've learned everything I can teach you here. So the question is, are you ready to teach yourself what comes after? I didn't answer. I didn't need to, because I already knew. That night, I walked through the city like I was seeing it with new eyes. I passed by empty storefronts, imagined floor plans, dreamt about windows that looked out over quiet streets where the smell of herbs could drift from the kitchen to the sidewalk. I wasn't chasing validation anymore. I was chasing something real, a place where my food could live without apology. I started small. I contacted old classmates, former mentors, even the woman who once sold me day-old produce when I couldn't afford the fresh batch. I pulled favors, asked questions, scribbled numbers on napkins in late-night diners. I found a tiny space, a rundown corner unit with stained tiles and a leaky faucet, and I saw everything it could become. I named it Embers. Because fire doesn't just burn, it lingers. Because heat can destroy, but it can also transform. And because everything I had survived was still glowing inside me, waiting to become something more. The first month was chaos. Permits, repairs, inspections, delays. I burned through my savings and half of my patience. I slept on the floor some nights, next to the walk-in fridge, because there wasn't time to go home. But on the day the doors opened, the line wrapped halfway around the block. Not because I had famous investors, not because anyone paid for ads, but because people had tasted something at Langston, something real, and they wanted more. The first night, I stood at the pass, watching plates leave the kitchen like pages from a journal I had written in secret for years. My cauliflower steak was on the menu. So was the corn bisque, and the bread pudding with tomato confit. But now they had my name next to them. Chef Emily Jameson. That night around 10 p.m. the front door opened and in walked someone I never expected to see. My mother. She was alone, hair pinned back, jacket buttoned tight, clutching something in her hands like it was holding her together. I stepped out from the kitchen slowly. She looked around the room, taking in the warm lighting, the exposed brick, the laughter from strangers eating food I had created from memory. I had to see it, she said. She held out what was in her hand. It was the article from the newspaper, folded but not creased. Your father keeps this in his wallet, she added, but I wanted a copy for myself. I didn't speak. I didn't need to. She nodded once, as if giving me something she had never managed to say out loud before. "I made a reservation for next week." I blinked. "You did?" "Yes," she said. "I want to bring the book club. They think you're a mystery." That made me laugh. I couldn't help it. "Will they like charred leeks and goat cheese foam?" I asked. She smiled a little. "They'll try anything if it comes from someone they're proud of." She turned to go. But just before she walked out the door, she looked back. "I was wrong," she said. "We all were, but you were always right to follow the fire." And then she was gone, back into the city night. Back into whatever version of the past she still carried. But I stayed in the light of my kitchen, where the burners hummed, where the herbs breathed against the heat, where the quiet, steady embers of every insult, every doubt, every moment of being overlooked had finally become flame. And that flame was mine. Embers had been open for 6 months when the first food critic came in. He didn't introduce himself, didn't pull out a notepad or make a scene. He just sat at the corner table, ordered 4 dishes, and finished every bite without a single word to the server. The next week, the review came out. "A quiet revolution is happening on 7th Street, and her name is Emily Jameson." The restaurant booked out for 3 months in a single day. I should have felt triumphant, victorious, like I'd climbed some impossible mountain, but what I really felt was stillness, not the numb kind, the full kind. Like sitting alone in a room you built with your own hands and realizing it doesn't matter who's watching, because you finally belong in it. One night, as I was locking up, I found myself staring at a photo we'd framed near the kitchen window. It wasn't of me, or the food, or even the restaurant. It was a shot of my old apartment kitchen. Tiny, cluttered, a single pan on the burner and a cracked backsplash behind it. I had taken it the day before culinary school started. Back when everything felt like a maybe. Back when all I had was a borrowed knife and a heart full of heat. I looked at that photo and smiled. Because that girl, the one no one believed in, she built this. She made something out of nothing. She didn't wait to be invited to the table. She built her own. A few days later, Rachel visited again. She brought a baby this time, her daughter, Ava. "You going to teach her how to cook?" I asked, half joking. Rachel looked down at the baby in her arms, then back at me. "No," she said. "I was hoping you would." We sat by the window for almost an hour. No tension, no awkwardness. Just 2 women who had finally figured out how to sit across from each other and listen. Before she left, she said something I'll never forget. "You were always the brave one. We just didn't have the eyes for it." That night after close, I walked into the kitchen and lit one single burner. I stood there, eyes closed, listening to the flame. Not because I was cooking, but because I wanted to remember what it sounded like. The sound of something beginning. The sound of heat that didn't destroy but created. And maybe the sound of peace. I never set out to prove anyone wrong. All I wanted was not to vanish. And maybe that's what we're all really looking for, not applause, not spotlight, just the quiet assurance that who we are is enough. That our voice, our craft, our story deserves a seat at the table. So if you've got a dream they mock, a path they don't understand, let them laugh. Then build something they can't ignore. Let your work speak louder than their doubt. Because sometimes the sweetest success isn't loud or flashy. It's peaceful, it's quiet, and it's yours. Thank you for listening to my story. If it touched something in you, if it reminded you of your own quiet fire, I'd love for you to stick around. Subscribe to the channel for more stories like this, of strength, of healing, and of finding your way back to yourself. And remember, you don't need anyone's permission to rise. You just need